It's that time of week once again where you take over for SCW Live Q&A. Going to be talking about SmackDown, Supersized SmackDown, going ahead against AEW Rampage and much, much more. I'm going to introduce my special guest straight after this. So I've got a very special guest joining me this week. He is a YouTuber, he is a Twitch streamer, and he also writes for PW Torch. Spoiler warning, Tom Colohue is in the house. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Lovely intro. I like that you slipped in the name of easily my most successful show, Spoiler Warning, there as well.
I was worried it was going to be gimmick infringement. I'm not going to lie to you, but I'm pleased to have you here. And for anyone that is not aware of your work, obviously I've just kind of sort of plugged it already, but tell everyone a bit about yourself if they don't know you already.
So my name is Tom Colohue, a wrestling journalist on PW Torch. I'm most known for writing the Roman Reigns-ometer, which is just basically a send-up and a parody of Roman Reigns in general, but also WWE and wrestling. I cover Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure, which is just a weekly podcast on the VIP network with a co-host who hates me. And that's kind of the gimmick. We like to get that, the two older Muppets who just watch theatre shows and hate each other. Yeah, that's the energy we bring to that table. But also, yes, I have my YouTube, where we cover some pretty intense news topics, and of course, Spoiler Warning over on Twitch, where we cover breaking news you can't find anywhere else. Some of the news recently that we've broken before it actually happens in the world of wrestling. Shayna Baszler and the push that she's getting, the return schedule for Bayley has done pretty well, and we were way ahead of the curve for Sonya Deville's return schedule.
Absolutely, and I can actually, agree and back up those claims. Watching those videos and saying that Tom has been very much on the money with a lot of the inside scoop, if you want. So, if you haven't already, then make sure to go and subscribe. Make sure to go and follow as well. You've got YouTube, Twitch, and many other great forms that you can follow the wonderful world of Tom Colohue and his wrestling knowledge. But you are spoiled today, ladies and gentlemen, because Tom is with us throughout the entirety of the show, and we are going to be talking in depth of all things going on in professional wrestling, which will be asked by you. And Supersonic is in the house. He says, hello, Stephen, Tom, how are you doing today? We are very well indeed. Thank you very much for joining the stream. We're looking forward to your questions during this show. But just while we're waiting for a few questions to crop in, I think the big talking point today has to be the fact that we do have a head-to-head coming this Friday, of course, with S1 for the week, because I believe there's some sort of sporting event which causes it to go to that place in the first place. But we're going head-to-head with AEW Rampage. Now, usually SmackDown is a 2-hour show and Rampage is a 1-hour show, starts straight afterwards. It is now going to be a supersized SmackDown that we've got. 30 extra minutes. The last 30 minutes, ironically, go into AEW Rampage and will be commercial-free, just to rub salt into the wound a little bit further. But AEW, they've bit back. We've got a buy-in coming into this as well, including matches, including Bryan Danielson going to be taking on Minoru Suzuki. Now, that is going to be a YouTube buy-in show, which, of course, being YouTubers ourselves, we know that the benefits YouTube can have. But, of course, there's many great things that are going to be taking place on both of the shows. But, Tom, before we go into detail of what goes on to each show, I wondered your overall perspective of what we've got here. A head-to-head WWE versus AEW for the first time. The main WWE show, SmackDown, in the ratings term anyway, against AEW's second show. But this is the first, as perhaps the Monday Night Wars.
It is, and it's been a long time coming. This is what we were promised. We were promised war. We were promised competition. It's taken a while to get us there because, to be blunt, NXT didn't really deliver that much competition to Dynamite, at least not over the course of it. But it shouldn't have been expected to. It was a C show, very much the C show in WWE's terms. Now we've got SmackDown, and while, yes, there's no easy way to say it's a fair fight because it's not in any way, shape, or form, it's the first time we really get a feel for what a war would look like. We were promised as fans healthy competition, and by healthy competition, you get better matches, you get more entertaining shows. Tell me we haven't already got that when you consider we're going to get Becky and Sasha to finish off the whole show, about a half-hour match with no commercial breaks. We're going to get Bryan Danielson, I'm still not used to that, versus the murder grandpa himself. We as fans can't lose. Now, what's been going on with Tony Khan? He's been stoking up a little bit of fervor. I'm not hugely against that, though, him jumping in and saying Raw wasn't very good. Not entirely behind that, because I feel that's punching down rather than elevating himself. I do feel that this is kind of what you have to do, though, as the smaller show. And he is the smaller show. You do have to punch up. You do have to make your jabs. It's good sporting competition, at least for the most part. And I'm very, very happy to see it, because you know the wrestlers themselves are going to be looking at this very competitively too.
Absolutely. And I've got to say, Tony Khan, he has been quite vocal, as you said there. And I don't mind him pulling. When you look at overall, like you said, it's not a fair fight. AEW probably is going to lose out on this. I don't see them defeating SmackDown anyway. But FS1, we do know, previously has at least half the WWE's ratings when it's gone from Fox to there. I believe even at one point they got like 800,000 viewers at one point for one of them SmackDown shows on FS1. Rampage has got up to the 1 million mark, but of course CM Punk can't return every week. Of course, that was one of the magical moments, and it has been going down rapidly. So to look at the two shows, like you said there, we've got Sasha and Becky on that main event scene. That's going to be a hell of a SmackDown main event, and I think that would tempt a lot of people to stick around if you're watching SmackDown. We've got the King of the Ring going on as well with Finn Balor and Sami Zayn. We've got the Queen's Crown, easy for me. We've got Brock Lesnar will be in the house, and we'd probably expect the likes of Roman Reigns, Edge, Seth Rollins, and more. And probably Bianca Belair will probably be in the house as well, interfering in and around that main event scene. So that's on Rampage. We've got CM Punk against Matt Sydal. We know that's going to be on the actual Rampage show on TNT. We know that we've got Ruby Soho against the Bunny, and we've got a 6-man tag team match as well with the Inner Circle's Chris taking on the Men of the Year, and I do forget the MMA fighter, unfortunately, off the top of my head, because MMA, not a big follower of it, but certainly should be interesting. And we've got, like we said, that those matches with Bobby Fish as well will be taking on, is it Lee Majority? We're taking on him as well on the buy-in.
Is it Moriarty? Lee
Moriarty probably sounds more correct on that one. I unfortunately don't follow Dark or Dark Elevation either at this moment. I'm giving a lot away very early days here. And as well, we've got Bryan Danielson against Mohiru Suzuki. So on the basis of those two shows, you'd expect WWE probably would win, but damn it, we really are the winners, aren't we? Because I'm going to watch both shows. I'm not in the right time zone probably to watch either of them live anyway. So I'm going to have a fantastic Saturday. I don't know about you.
Oh, I'll be watching it live. I have a responsibility. This is what we do. We do SmackDown watch parties over on the Twitch channel. Yes. So I watch every SmackDown live with a damn good group of people. And we just, if it's bad, we laugh at it. If it's good, we get hyped up about it. Now, Rampage, I haven't done regular watch-alongs for that, but I can at least pop YouTube up on my phone and watch Minoru Suzuki cave Daniel Bryan's chest in. Because we can very reliably say that Daniel Bryan, he bruises easy, and Minoru Suzuki, he likes to bruise.
He does indeed. I'm very much looking forward. That seems to be the standout match, and it's for a buy-in as well. One question I've got for you, because we're getting quite a few comments coming in from people, obviously, as well, so we do want to get to everyone in the chat also. But with the idea of YouTube, of course, you look at the ratings and stuff like that, but YouTube is a great platform, and obviously, with that, they surely could get a lot of people watching that buy-in that perhaps wouldn't watch wrestling on TV anyway, because TV, some may say, is becoming an outdated market. Social media and also social platforms like what we're using here are becoming more and more popular. So could you find that AEW could maybe get, I don't know, maybe 1 million people watching this buy-in over the course of time from all different parts of the world, not just the United States? And it could perhaps, let's say, suffer the bruising if they were to lose in the ratings to SmackDown on Friday evening.
I feel they'll definitely get very good numbers. 1 million, I feel, is quite generous when you consider how little it's actually been promoted so far. It was quite late in the day they said the show was coming, and they're relying on wrestling journalists to basically keep feeding that train and keep the wheel turning. Now, the wrestlers themselves, they've been partaking in interviews, they've been hyping things up. I feel they'll get very good numbers, but anything that increases the number of subscribers on that YouTube channel is a massive win. The WWE's YouTube is a juggernaut, and not enough is said about the amount of money that is made for very little cost just from that YouTube. They don't need to explain storylines. You can catch up on YouTube. They don't need to create brand new content when you can watch clips on YouTube. You might not watch Raw entirely, but you'll watch on YouTube and you'll get millions of views every day on that YouTube, increase in subscribers, all of those become people that you can market to, that you can sell to, that are up to date, even if they're not watching regularly. AEW does not quite have that. And AEW as a practice do not really re-inform people of the storylines anyway, because they assume people watch week in, week out. They don't have that strong a casual fan base. They have a very strong hardcore fan base who do watch week in and week out. If they can keep growing that YouTube, they don't really need to worry about a network. They don't really need to worry that much about sponsors. WWE makes millions for overheads of less than 1 million from that YouTube. The amount of turnover is ridiculous. Any way that they can get more people subscribed is a huge win for AEW, and they know that. That's why we have Dark. That's why we have Dark Elevation. They know what the fans want to see, and it's a way of making it happen for them.
It's a fantastic point there. Just before we go into the chat room, I think I need to ask one more question just based on this topic. What do you think is more likely when we get to that half an hour where we've got SmackDown and AEW clashing? Is it more likely, I mean, in my head, I think this is probably an obvious answer, but still, that AEW fans would say, no, I need to watch that match on SmackDown? Or is it more likely that SmackDown fans would turn over to AEW Rampage? Which one's more likely?
Well, I'll answer this in two parts. Firstly, as regards the fans, WWE fans are more likely to tune into AEW than AEW fans are likely to tune into WWE. There's a reason for this. We've just spoken about casual fan bases. WWE fans are far less behind the company than AEW fans are. And I've already seen plenty of messages, however misguided they may be, saying that people have a duty to tune in to Rampage. That's part of that feel. And Tony Khan's reactions, as it were, is part of that, whipping up the fan base, appealing to your base in a way that certainly has been proven to work. That said, I think the big offering from AEW Rampage is not on Rampage. The big offering is on YouTube. The big offering is absolutely free. Whereas on WWE, the big offering is that final half hour. I think the audience will peak in that final half hour. Sasha Banks is a proven draw. Becky Lynch is a proven draw. No commercial breaks, no distractions. That last half hour, that is a killer for AEW.
I have to agree with everything that's been said there, Tom. And yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how it's going to play out on Friday. But I'm sure we're going to be discussing it in more detail as this video goes on, because it's definitely a hot, trending topic today. But let's go and dive into the chat, shall we? Because we've got some questions waiting. We've got some people coming to say hello as well, including Randy Sam, who says, sup, Steve and Tom. He says he means SCW, but you can call me Steve. I don't mind. We can go on that sort of name basis. I'm quite happy for that. Wrestling by Waldridge has got a question for us. I'm going to switch our screen up as well for us now to hear. It says, evening lads, hope you're both doing well. Who do you have to win the AEW's World Title Eliminator Tournament, which of course was announced last becoming, I think we're going to learn the competitors this weekend. But of course, we don't know that we don't know the information just yet. But what we do know is that we are going to be getting those announcements later in the week. Tom, who do you have as a favorite for that final at the Full Gear pay-per-view?
It's a difficult one to answer without knowing the competitors, particularly with the way that AEW books their talent. It's not just the top names all go into an 8-man bracket. That's not the way that they do things. I would like to see a number of people involved. I would like to see CM Punk in the final, but not as a winner. I want to see him put someone over, and I think this is a perfect chance for him to deliver that. I think there's people like Darby Allin, Sammy Guevara, MJF, sort of the second tier in AEW, who are always ready to step in and take that top spot. Darby Allin would be perfect for this. But I also feel that Adam Page has so much momentum. I feel like I'm always going to be sat saying, now's the time, now's the time, now's the time. You can overplay your hand. I would like to see AEW move forwards. Adam Page challenging for the championship and becoming champion. That's the way to do it for me.
Absolutely. And of course, we win the Casino Ladder match. Hopefully that match will be announced for the Full Gear match. And with that title eliminator, so CM Punk putting someone over in the final, I think would be quite cool. Would someone like Miro work for you? Of course, he's been so dominant as TNT champion. And obviously now we've seen the likes of him now, losing that recently, but it's his first loss in AEW. Could you see that transition now for him going towards the main event picture, perhaps being a future opponent for like a Hangman Page once he wins the championship?
I could see him more as a potential opponent for a Hangman Page than a Kenny Omega, as Kenny Omega is at current. I just don't feel the dynamics of the two of them, that their face-heel dynamic and more in just character, really gels right now. But at the same time, I do suspect we're going to be seeing Lana appear in AEW relatively soon. She offers a lot of marketability, even beyond just in the ring. I feel they'll pair them back up. So that could be sort of the relaunch of Miro that we're also kind of waiting for with Karrion Kross.
Interesting. Interesting indeed. Yeah, I would have to agree with that point there. And I hope that answers your question well there, Aaron. Thank you for checking out the stream. And we've got Supersonic saying Suzuki is the same guy who dismantled Oscar back in Japan a few years ago before Oscar came to WWE. So there you go. That's connecting some of the dots there in the history. Was you aware of that, Tom?
I was. For people who aren't familiar with Minoru Suzuki, and I know it's quite a wide variety of people, this guy terrifies me. He basically, if I saw him in a crowded room, I would leave that room, I would leave that house, I would leave that country, and I would never come back because the guy's deadly. I don't know if pro wrestling is predetermined when Minoru Suzuki's in the ring. I always get the feeling he basically just decides what he wants to do in that. And if you've ever seen Minoru Suzuki versus Jon Moxley, just for an achievable one, those two were legitimately trying to murder each other. Legitimately. Minoru Suzuki doesn't care if you're a woman. You're there as a wrestler. You've been served up to him. He doesn't care if you're a small child. If you're in that ring, you better get out of the way.
It's almost like your fair game when Suzuki's around. I must admit, I have had many a joy watching a Wrestle Kingdom, seeing just destroy the young boys around ringside. And think those poor sausages, they're just learning their craft, but Suzuki can't help but whack a chair over their back. He's got no remorse whatsoever. And it just goes to show there. And it set Oscar on her way to WWE. And we've got Jeff Samuel as well. He says, what if we get some sort of return this Friday on FS1? The Undertaker, lol. But we will see, like Tom said, competition is good. Would you see some sort of returns? Obviously, I can't see the Undertaker being one of them, but do you think WWE needs to bring something more out of the bag, or do you reckon that their hand is steady enough with the Supersized SmackDown this Friday?
I feel ultimately they've given us a lot, but they won't go too far, because ultimately it's not going to be seen by that many people. They are on the lesser side, as it were, so they won't go all the way through. Also, there's not that many people who could actually make a surprise return. We laugh at the idea of The Undertaker, and so we should, because retire, dead man, retire, please God, don't come back. We've had enough of this now. But at the same time, we have to say, quite honestly, who else is there? You've already got Brock Lesnar making his return. Outside of maybe Bayley, I don't feel there's anyone really in that position to make the big return, unless you're really reaching into the back pocket and you're getting divisive figures like Hulk Hogan.
Absolutely. We'll have to wait and see if anyone would be brought back on Friday. I personally don't see it. I think that WWE's hand is strong enough. And like you say, and I'm going to ask this question, Tom, as it's kind of like a transition. You say reach deep into the back pocket. Obviously, the Survivor Series is taking place later this year. It's a traditional Raw versus SmackDown pay-per-view. But it happens to be the 25th anniversary of a particular debut from a particular WWE superstar of the past, who now happens to be Hollywood's #1 movie star. I'm talking about Dwayne Johnson. Is there a chance that The Rock could appear at the Survivor Series this November?
There is every chance that The Rock could appear at Survivor Series this November. There has been a plethora of rumors that The Rock would be making an appearance and somehow being involved with Roman Reigns, leading into a match which he would lose at WrestleMania. There's been plenty of rumors, though they have now very notably quietened down. It's important that we remember that these rumors are out there for whether he is or isn't, essentially. With it being the 25th anniversary, you can think back to what happened with The Undertaker at his 25th anniversary. There was a celebration, even though I believe he just basically beat up the entire Wyatt family alongside Kane in one of many questionable pieces of booking, in which the Wyatt family were the strongest, the worst, the strongest, the worst, the strongest, but you can't handle The Rock on his own. A lot of stuff going on there. I do feel they will do some sort of celebration for The Rock. I think they're waiting until post-Saudi Arabia to announce it. But I feel this is one area, when it comes to history at least, that an AEW can't compete. They just can't. And they should not try when it comes to names like The Rock. This is one thing in which the WWE can celebrate something huge, give a big moment for The Rock, without harming or really impacting anything else. It's a draw, but doesn't have to be going anywhere. It can be a one-night thing.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. We saw it when I think SmackDown actually debuted on Fox, didn't we? We had him in the ring with Becky Lynch and gave a rock bottom to, at the time, I believe, was King Corbin back then. I think that was the last appearance we had from the Great One. So, I mean, if he was to even come and do something like that, I'm pretty sure that Brooklyn at the Barclays Center would be absolute in person. Like you say, it didn't even have to lead into it. Even if it was a rock bottom on Roman Reigns and it didn't happen until we got to WrestleMania in LA 18 months later, certainly it could be just that first seed into something if it was to go down.
I certainly think that would make a lot more sense. A tease, at least, is a good start. You don't have to do the match for years, but you've got that first bit of that vignette before the match ready, locked, and loaded. What I would like to see is to be quite subtle. The Rock celebration, ultimately, as it's wrapping up and he's heading up the ramp, Roman Reigns' music hits. He shows no respect, walks past The Rock, holding the championship, and then ignores him completely. Don't let him on the mic because you know how dangerous that would be.
Yeah.
Roman didn't quite match up to John Cena. He's certainly not going to match up to The Rock.
I'm loving this booking strategy, Tom. Loving the booking strategy. Let's get Ed Fries in for the first time this evening. Thank you for checking that stream. Ed, he says, can someone please explain to me why everyone now feels that major matches on the internet when it could be on TV or pay-per-view? This is a very interesting point, obviously. A match like Danielson versus Suzuki probably would entice people to go and check out a pay-per-view or to perhaps put it on Rampage instead of a buy-in. What are your thoughts with this? Obviously, like we said, it's a last-minute addition. But yeah, what's your thoughts of internet over TV or pay-per-view? Where should it be in the, in the structure of things? Where should this match really be?
This basically is a bit of past, present, or future. Pay-per-view is the past. There is no real question about it. Pay-per-view is not where wrestling is focused anymore. It gets the lowest eyes, which means also the lowest sponsorship. You don't make the money from pay-per-view anymore. You just don't. TV is the now. That's the current. If you want to make money, you put the stuff on free TV. You give it away for free because now the money isn't in the matches. It's in the advertising. It's in the eyes. The more eyes you get, even if they're not paying anything, the more money you get. The future is the internet. It's a natural evolution of what I've just said because you will get more eyes on the internet long term. TV viewership, it's dying. It's going. It's been going for a long time. When we say that Raw has hit record lows, it does that every single year. So much so that the WWE are fully prepared for it. The right thing to do is to shift things online because of that accessibility, those extra eyes, especially in the landscape we're in now. Over the last 2 years, people have been locked in their homes. They can't go to shows. So they've sat and they've watched on Twitch. They've watched on YouTube. We've had an unprecedented growth period for wrestling companies. And just a huge part of that is pushing for the internet. We're not there yet. We're really not. But it's a lot like, to use a gaming term, when it was PS4 versus Xbox One, the Xbox One said, you won't be able to swap games. It'll all be online and you'll always be online. At the time, it was panned. It was ridiculous. Now, we've got it on both upcoming consoles and nobody's batted an eyelid. We're going to get there because the money is in how many people view it rather than sponsorship, rather than pay-per-view numbers. Money essentially has gone to the people.
Absolutely. Would that also explain why perhaps the WWE Network was ahead of its time when it was brought in 2014 rather than the old pay-per-view format?
Absolutely. It also meant that you had a captive audience. The big success of the WWE Network was NXT. You had a captive audience who would watch week in and week out. And it showed because of the love that show got. People already liked it before they watched it. Whereas with the WWE Network now, they're breaking it down and they're moving it onto streaming sites, onto the internet, because that's where the money is now. The WWE Network was not a huge earner for the WWE. It never was. YouTube earns more per year than the WWE Network.
There you go, all summed up. And that's obviously why Peacock has come into the conversation. But Tom, I, like yourself, probably very grateful that we currently don't have to use that streaming service with the amount of complaints we see every pay-per-view with clashes. We still have the network, and long may that continue. Please, everyone, keep away from the UK version of it. But we can only hope. Eric Travis is in the house, and he says that up Stephen Tom. Did you hear Booker T's comments? He said he's happy that AEW and WWE is bringing the war again, and he said WWE should bring in a Volta this Friday to confront Brock and Roman on FS1. I love Tom, we've spoken about this on your stream very recently on YouTube, and you brought up the quotes that he said a couple of years ago. Where does Walter stand at the moment? Is there a chance he could come to the USA, or do you think he's still more likely to remain in the United Kingdom for a long time to come?
The conversation is ongoing. The WWE are essentially trying to convince him, but having interviewed Walter, I can honestly say this guy does whatever the hell he wants. He really does. He has a very clear image of who he is and what he wants to be. And just a huge part of that is not doing what the WWE are going to want him to do. Now, it's telling at the minute. There were reports out, I believe it was PW Insider, who said that Walter's going to be used a lot more on other brands now that he's lost the championship, potentially even getting called up. Now, the call-up didn't happen. And I do believe we're close to contract renewal time.
Oh.
So I believe that's an ongoing conversation as well. A lot is going to be thrown at Walter to try and convince him to stick around. He could still make appearances on Raw and on SmackDown. However, last I heard, he does very much see his future in Europe. That's where he lives. That's where he's happiest. And I think it's also a large part of that is that the last time he was in the US, the NXT UK Championship was stolen from him.
Yeah, that didn't go down too well, Ivan. That's a very serious thing that happened to him. But obviously, from a booking standpoint as well, protecting the character. If you go back to Survivor Series 2019, he lost in less than 5 minutes when he's been unstoppable any time before. Obviously, that protection of that character, surely he would have that integrity where he'd say, well, will I be booked well on a Raw or a SmackDown? I mean, Nick Khan has been ruthless of late with talents and stuff. If there is contract renewal time, where do you see that ending? Does Walter resign, or could we see him going somewhere else?
I think WWE will convince him to resign. This is just me talking personally. I don't see any reason that he would move on unless they try to force his hand and basically force him to move to the United States. He is an incredibly valuable player, even if he only comes across for 2-3 matches per year. When it comes to big name stars, Walter is by far the biggest one left in NXT UK. So honestly, I think they would risk a lot by letting him go.
I would have to agree with you. And just to answer that question there, I would love to see him confront Roman and Brock. Obviously, I think it's a no-brainer for you that you would love to see it as well.
Oh, absolutely. Any big moment like that would make a big difference. It would be fantastic, but ultimately, he ain't got no chance against Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. No chance whatsoever if that actually becomes a match. I would rather see something like him approaching Karrion Kross and beating him, because you take risks in moments like this. This is why way back in, I think it was 2019 November time, when he made his appearances on Raw and SmackDown in the build-up to that Survivor Series, it was a 4 versus 4. It was an 8-man tag team match, so someone else could take the pin.
That's very true. I remember that actually playing out at the time, being quite disappointed. Last thing I'll just quickly say, just before we move on to the next question, so I must fall too far behind the time already, which is very easy to do on these live streams, by the way.
Yeah.
As I had a fantasy booking idea a long time ago, and I'm not sure if I've actually shared this with you, Tom, so I'd like to just do so very quickly. NXT's in its new inception of 2.0. Should we not get Volta, say, to Raw and SmackDown, but he would agree to do it, like you said there, a few matches a year on NXT, or 2.0, should we say. How about he got the Brock treatment? He came in, won the NXT Championship, and would only defend it on takeovers. What would be your feelings of a storyline like that? Would it get backlash, or do you reckon it could work with the Volta character?
Backlash isn't always a negative, or at least isn't always a long-term negative. People forget that heels are supposed to be hated, and Brock Lesnar's championship run was a massive success in that regard. It very nearly got Roman Reigns over as a face, and that's a mission that they've been on for years. If you give me that concept, Volta maybe doing a 6-month tour, for example, as champion, it certainly wouldn't be for years like Brock Lesnar's felt like, or sometimes it felt like decades. But for me, Volta would be perfect in that role. The question is as regards NXT 2.0, because I'm going to be completely honest, he's grown past it. He's grown way past it. NXT 2.0 is a developmental brand still, and firmly. And with this in mind, Volta has outgrown all of NXT before he even stepped through the door.
With the current conception how it's been the last few weeks, I think I would agree with you. And that's why I was really hoping to see Imperium on Raw, but it didn't play out in the end. But hey, Wrestling Rob Aldridge, speaking about NXT last night, he says, any idea who the person in the graveyard vignette was and who will be appearing at Halloween Havoc? Now, I had a couple of theories in mind. Tom, have you managed to see this?
I have managed to see this, and my opinion, I know there's been a lot of rumors suggesting Elias from fans. My opinion is that it will be a woman. I think this is a reinvention of Tian Sha.
Oh, okay, interesting. I would be very much in favour of that because that gimmick has really grown stale for a long time for me. I agree with you that I think it'd be a female, and I'm going to give credit where I saw the freeze still of this on her Twitter page, I believe it was Denise Salcedo, and I agree. It looks like it would be a female. And my thought process with that is that I thought it'd be Ember Moon because she's been losing matches for the longest time, and she has said for a while now something needs to change. So I wondered if perhaps she could be a natural fit. But I like the idea of Tian Shan because, as I say, not been a fan of that gimmick for quite a while now. What would be your thoughts if it was to be Ember Moon?
I'd be very happy with that. I was hoping Ember Moon would be called back up. I really was, for several reasons. Firstly, you get her back to working with Up, Down, Down, and we get more D&D. I really enjoyed those, and I think different things like that is a great way to get people over. Also, there really aren't many people like Ember Moon on the main roster. No. I still very fondly remember her sort of mini match with Naomi in the first Money in the Bank ladder match that they were both in. I think it was the third one overall. That was incredible work from both women. We know what she can do. Something didn't work on the main roster. If there isn't a plan for her on the main roster, don't bring her up. I look at what's happening now with Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart with Toni Storm. There's clearly no plan, so why did you bring them up at all? But I do feel with a lot of what's happening in NXT, it seems to be that people are called up because NXT are done with them at times. So the fact that she wasn't called up does suggest to me that there may be something happening. I'd be very happy with it being Ember Moon.
It would be interesting if that does play out that way, and certainly would be a nice continuation of her current storyline because she looked quite disappointed after her most recent loss, which I believe was to Mandy Rose this past couple of weeks ago on NXT. We've got Paige will be epic if Sonya makes her Naomi's opponent SCW. That would be an interesting proposition because I must admit, I didn't mention that Naomi versus Sonya Deville is on SmackDown this week as well, but I could see Sonya stepping aside for someone to take her spot and make her earn this match with Sonya. There has been a lot of talk of Sonya's in-ring return. In fact, you've been talking about it on your YouTube and Twitches as well. Could you get a bit of detail into her return schedule? And do you think it's possible we see it in the ring this Friday, or we're going to actually start this as a storyline to delay it a little bit further?
Well, the return, I first announced it. Well, I first mentioned it on Twitter way back when. I think it was June time. Early June, mid-June, I want to say. At that time, they were discussing putting her into the Money in the Bank. That was confirmed about a month later behind the Fightful paywall, Fightful Select. And then from there, it's just been slow and steady. Just a lot of slow and steady. Physically, she's ready, she's trained, she's prepared, but it's really a question of finding the right storyline and also her comfort levels. I'm never going to sit here and say we need to see her back because she went through a harrowing experience. Something that would turn most people off of wrestling entirely. And she's still looking to come back. Have to give Mandy Rose credit there as well. She went through the same harrowing experience, but did manage to come back. When it comes to Sonya, I do think it more likely that she steps aside for someone else. I don't know who that someone else would be. I definitely don't think it'll be Paige, for example. But at the same time, Paige is on that coast. So it's... would certainly be a fun possibility. Logically, outside of that, it's really hard to pick a name as a lower down the card heel who could work against Naomi. I just want to see her back in the ring at this point. I really do. I know she's got so much to offer, and I've really missed her in the time she's been out.
Yeah, really missed her as well. And like you said there, it's just a credit that she still wants to do this and has gone through and she's back on our TV screens after everything she's been through. Like you said, the same with Mandy Rose as well. That it's going to be really interesting to see how it will play out on Friday. It's one of my favourite storylines at the minute, Sonya and Naomi. So I am quite looking forward to it on SmackDown. And like you say, perhaps someone low-key could be thrown into the position. Maybe someone like Natalya, who technically is SmackDown, even though she was used on the Raw side of the Queen of the Ring. But I mean, could be someone of that ilk maybe at this moment, but could also be an NXT call-up. Could even be a return. Like you said, I don't think it'll be Paige at this point, but she has teased January. Could a Royal Rumble be a...
I would definitely say it's a possibility. The Royal Rumble is one of those wonderful things where anyone can appear, and even if there's no long-term storyline for them, it's a big moment. I've posited the concept that Bayley may be returning in time for the Royal Rumble because you can protect someone in a Royal Rumble even if in a win. And I would love to see Bayley win and then go on to challenge Becky. You can sort of not use her for a couple of months in ring to make that work. Sonya Deville, for me, there is no losing. There is absolutely no losing whenever she does choose to make her return. I suspect she'll make her return before that, even just to sort of warm up to the audience again. And I do feel that there's a lot of really good candidates, at least on the women's side, for the Royal Rumble this year. Shayna Baszler, for example, is one that I definitely would like to see in that role.
Absolutely, and that's if she doesn't earn a title match, if she wins the Queen's Crown as well. There's definitely a lot of hype around Baszler at the minute, which of course you've been plugging as well a lot earlier on your YouTube and Twitch channels as well. Definitely recommend you to go and check that video out if they haven't already as well. But stick around for the time being because we've got plenty to go through. Lots of questions here also. C Nation Dog is in the house. C Nation, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us. He says we've got Crown Jewel October 21st, Bound for Glory October 23rd, and Halloween Havoc October 25th. He is hyped. He doesn't just get hyped. He stays hyped. By the seams of it, which is really cool to see. But yeah, a lot of wrestling, a lot of big shows coming on there. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to.
There is. Now, I'm not someone who watches Crown Jewel personally. It's a Saudi Arabia show. I state my very small protest. It makes really no difference to them, but it makes a difference to me. So I won't be watching Crown Jewel, despite the fact that I finally got a little bit excited with some of the matches that they've added recently. It's a hell of a show that they're presenting there. That said, we are stacked. This is a great time to be a wrestling fan. Even just looking at this Friday, it's a fantastic time to be a wrestling fan. The WWE are delivering good quality at the minute. I didn't hate Raw this week. I didn't. I thought SmackDown wasn't great, but Raw has been sort of living up to expectations more. Bound for Glory, Impact have delivered good shows recently, even though they've been borrowing heavily to do so. And NXT, even though it's 2.0, we can still afford to be very excited for it.
Absolutely. Some good title matches been added to that show. I think 3 at the last time I checked. And so lots of things to look forward to. C Nation, thank you for your comment there. We've got Jason as well in house. He says, I don't want war, but I'm happy for this. If AEW can make WWE change, the better. We have our happy competition is good. And he says, what are the vignettes? Dakota Kai, or perhaps a free agent, maybe bringing in someone back like Sarah Logan. We'll touch on the NXT stuff in a couple of seconds. But yeah, I mean, competition is good ultimately, end of the day, isn't it?
It really is. We all have very fond memories of the Attitude Era. Even if, when you look back at the Attitude Era, it kind of sucked. It really did. I have never seen so many 2-minute matches in my life. And Billy Gunn accounts for most of them somehow, some way. The Houdini of Hardcore Crash Holly was genuinely entertaining. Do you remember when he and Crash Holly, when he and Hardcore Holly decided to become super heavyweights and carry scales around?
Yeah, it was genius.
Yeah. Do you remember giving birth to a hand from Mae Young?
That was not.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember when DX used to make vignettes where Triple H just went around being racist to people? These things genuinely did happen. And it's difficult stuff to watch. Looking back, it wasn't that good. What made it feel good was the constant competition. You had Steve Austin in the draw segment in the middle of every show and main eventing every show and probably opening every show too. You had people like The Rock, because if you weren't the best, you were out the door and the other side would give it a try. Jeff Jarrett's a perfect example. WCW, elevated. It's all right. Move to WWE's, elevate a little higher. We'll reach the top here. WCW, higher. WWF, higher. Leaves because of a good housekeeping match and becomes champion on the other side. That rotation works. It helps. There will be people who go from AEW to WWE. This is a good chance for WWE to convince some of them that it's worth their time.
Very true indeed. Yeah, a lot of good points you make there. And obviously going through the Monday Night Wars. I'm actually going through WCW at the minute. I never got the opportunity to watch all the Nitros and Thunders. And I'm going through 98 at the minute. And I have to say to you, yes, not everything during that period was fun. And particularly watching a drunk Scott Hall gimmick right now, which I can say definitely was not one of the high points. Even the Giant with a smoking gimmick as well. And yeah, there's definitely some questionable stuff. And we won't talk ill, unfortunately, of the Warrior and Hollywood Hogan stuff that was going on around that period as well in 98 was not very good to say the very least. But going on to NXT, we've mentioned there obviously some names already, but what about a Sarah Logan or a Dakota Kai? Would any of them suit the role here? Because Dakota Kai has not been on TV for a long time. Sarah Logan's not been with the company for well over a year now.
I don't expect to see Sarah Logan, mostly because Nick Khan has made it very clear he does not like bringing people back. Triple H bringing back Samoa Joe was not that popular a decision in the boardroom, shall we say. Now, while Sarah Logan is still technically involved by extension with the WWE. There just doesn't seem to be any interest. The WWE firmly believe they have more than enough people in NXT to become top-level stars on the main roster too. So there doesn't seem to be much interest in bringing her back that I've seen, at least. Now, Dakota Kai, that's a question, isn't it? Because she was ready. She's done everything she can do in NXT. They wrote her off very succinctly, and then she didn't get called up, which is baffling to me. I can only assume that there was no satisfactory plan. I don't think this suits her character unless it's a complete reinvention, and I think there is enough there for Dakota Kai that you don't need a complete reinvention. You've already got a great character, a great personality, and a great wrestler there. So I hope it's not.
I hope it's not as well. There's been a great story with Dakota Kai coming in, that sort of like squeaky clean baby face. She was almost like a 2.0 Bailey that just didn't hug. You know, she was almost a bit too soft for this and went through that program with Shayna Baszler. It toughened her up. She got that injury when she was out for the longest time, made such a good friend in Tegan Knox. Coming back and then turning on in War Games, which I still go down, is one of the greatest takeover moments ever, because it just shocked the whole room when that happened. The whole place went for it. And then we've seen with Raquel Gonzalez, that relationship. There's been so many great stories with Dakota Kai getting to this moment. Like you said, just throw it all away would feel a bit of a waste. But at the same time, if they've got no plans for it and it would get her back on TV, I guess. But yeah, I mean, some of the other names we've mentioned, I think would be more preferable to. But certainly be interesting what does happen with Dakota Kai and that going forward. But Jason, thank you very much anyway. We'll be coming back to more questions now. Supersonic X saying, do you think Halloween Havoc 2021 will be the perfect time for Io Shirai to drop the NXT Women's Tag Team titles and get called up to the main roster? With Asuka injured, someone have to stop the heel. I'm going to see if that follows. Yeah, so we have to stop the heels. I think so. For me personally, I think El Shirai has been helping that tag team division at the moment, just, I suppose, build in NXT 2.0 right now. I have found the Stark stuff semi-entertaining, I must admit. But at the same time, I do think that El Shirai is above this. But what would happen if she went to Raw and SmackDown? Would she be a success? Tom, what would be your thoughts?
It's difficult to pinpoint, especially this close to WrestleMania, where the WWE historically doesn't tend to take risks in that regard. I think it's more likely, for example, they'll take the safe options of Sasha Banks versus Charlotte and Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch. I think that's more likely than Io Shirai at this point. That said, Io Shirai is another one. She's done everything on NXT. She's been a big help to this tag team division. But this is a time when the WWE proper really desperately needs female tag teams, because they just broke them up again and just wiped the slate completely clean and said, no, we'll just start from scratch. We'll just pretend none of this ever happened and start from scratch. I don't know that she would come up as a tag team per se, but I do feel if she does come up and if there is a plan for this, I don't see her going for championships. That said, I think you're absolutely right in pointing out that there is a real problem with it when it comes to the amount of heels on both women's divisions, because there really aren't many good guys to root for. There really aren't.
No, and Io Shirai would be someone that people would get behind. I'm pretty sure of it. She's an outstanding. I mean, she's my favorite women's wrestler. I think she's incredible in-ring talent, but I do worry how they would book her. But like you say, she's done everything in NXT 2.0. Does it come to a point, if she sticks around NXT for the next 12 months, that all the credit we've done building up this great championship reign, it could kind of diminish and her stock could actually be lessened by the time she gets called up if she's sort of floundering around an NXT mid-card full of developmental?
Absolutely. Look at Tommaso Ciampa. He's a big name, but he's been bigger. There were times when he was the hottest act in the world. Now he's just sort of there. You can outstay your welcome in NXT because it's designed that way. It is designed that you do everything and then you move on and you get out of the way of the people who come behind. Tommaso Ciampa has not done that. Io Shirai, I think, should do that at some point, but it's not up to her.
That's true. That's true. Let's see how it develops there. But Supersonic, thanks for your question. Yeah, I think we would like to see those belts change. Out of interest, just before we do move on, do you would like to see it to go to Toxic Attraction, or do you want to see it to go to Indy Hartwell and her brand new tag team partner and best friend?
I think Toxic Attraction have earned it, whereas Indy Hartwell can take a little bit more time before then stepping up. I'm not sure Indy Hartwell's dynamic of face or heel is too clear at the minute. That's not a bad thing. That's really not a bad thing. It allows her to develop sort of independently of that. A good heel tag team with the championships makes a big difference. And heel champions, they're all the rage right now.
They are indeed. And just to say, if that was the opener of the night as well, it would kind of give that momentum to Mandy Rose going into her championship match later in the night as well. So that definitely could be something to keep an eye out for there. SC Williams is with us. He says, hang on, let's see. Bro, what SCW can I like Tom? He's positive like Dave Meltzer of the YouTube. We need Tom and SCW partnership now. Breaking news. Well, thank you very much. We enjoy collaborating while we are together. It's always nice to collaborate with you, Tom. I have to say that while you're in there, and it's good to see that other people enjoying it as well.
I try and be positive when it comes to YouTube and videos and Twitch. Sometimes, I get into my little rants. I will admit to that, but I think we all do. My role more than anything is to try and entertain. And I really do enjoy working with you, Steve. There's a reason I wanted you onto my WrestleMania coverage, and I'm sure those days will come again as we continue to grow both of our audiences and find new people and really try and find a way to deliver new, fresh content to the people who've been here and have deserved our attention from day one as well.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said that any better, honestly. And I must admit, I do enjoy your power of positivity that you bring to your streams. And I've got to say that when rants need to be done, rants need to be done. So I don't blame you when those dues do come. And it does say, how's everybody? Good question. What's next for Miro since he lost the TNT title belt? Maybe a feud with Malachi Black. This is what I will do. Have Miro interfere on Friday and cost Jericho to lose, and I'll have Jericho versus Miro by Jericho putting Miro over. That's what SC Williams would do, and that's certainly a fun direction there because not a match I can remember ever seeing before. Chris Jericho and Miro. Would that be something you'd be quite interested in seeing?
I would be. Chris Jericho at the moment is still one of the biggest names in AEW, and he's basically made an entire career so far on putting over new and developing wrestlers. That's what he does. That's what he's there for, and he's really genuinely done wonders for that company in that role. Miro, I don't think, needs the developing wrestler tag, but to be fair, most of AEW no longer needs that developing wrestling tag. They're there. There's a finished product. I would like to see the match because it's different. I do like the concept of Malachi Black, but I do feel there is a certain tier in AEW which includes a lot of former WWE guys. Miro, Black, Andrade all really fit that bill, whereby they're all sort of stuck on one exact level, sort of the Cody Rhodes level, as it were.
Yes.
I would like Miro to continue to chase that championship, but I would like an actual division to be built, which isn't something AEW really does all that much because of the way they space out their pay-per-views. But I'd still like to see several people competing for that championship. Give me Miro, give me Black, give me Andrade, give me Jericho, give me everyone on the chase.
I like the sound of that there. And I love the sound of Jericho versus Miro. I think that's a great suggestion there, SC. And also what I would say, also, as we said earlier in the video, I wouldn't mind if Miro was to win the World Championship Eliminator Tournament that's going to take place, with the final taking place at Full Gear later this year. Jamie Holmes is in the house. Jamie, how you doing? Thank you for joining us. Says Anna Jay has not been seen with the Dark Order for a few weeks now and seems to have her own music now instead of the Dark Order's. Do you think that she's left Dark Order, or is she just doing her own thing like the Inner Circle? Very good question. Obviously, with the Inner Circle, they're kind of doing their own thing at the moment. Not really been labeled as a faction, but they've come together and will be taking part as a trio this week on Rampage. With Anna Jay, obviously, she's kind of was what brought the Dark Order sort of back together. But if she is sort of doing her own thing on the side, of course, she's got a great friendship with Ty Conti, a very good friendship, and definitely a big fan of that duo on AEW. What are your feelings with this, Tom? Do you think that she's sort of pulling away, or do you reckon it's a similar thing like we see with the Inner Circle?
It is a similar thing like the Inner Circle. AEW track social media and trends and information like that. They are sensing some, shall we say, faction fatigue. A large part of that is that we have a lot of very large factions doing a lot and taking up a lot of airtime. Letting the Dark Order sort of separate a little bit allows Anna Jay to stand on her own, and it just gives them a chance to see if she's got what it takes to go to the next level. Having her sort of isolated in that way shows whether she has what it takes to take the step up. And I think while she won't be a challenger for Britt Baker anytime soon, she may be an ideal challenger for whoever comes next.
Oh, that's a very good shout there. And what about the TBS Championship that's going to be introduced very, very shortly? Could she be a contender in that perhaps tournament?
Absolutely. I think she'd be a great person to go far in that tournament because she's a recognizable face, because she's been separate from the women's division top level for so long. She does have the ability to stand out individually on her own, and that does mean that you can find airtime, you can find marketability, you can do all of this. She would be a great champion of that sort of mini division underneath the top division. And it also just gives a lot more people opportunity. AEW have not had a lot of love for their women's division, basically since they started. Anna Jay is someone you can bank on.
She definitely is a banker, and I hope that she's definitely going to be for positive things going forward. She only wrestled like 8 matches when she signed for AEW, so she's definitely doing well. She's developing. She's obviously been out for a long time with an injury. Now she's back. Let's see if she can sink or swim in that situation. But speaking of faction fatigue, that brings us to West Coast Podcast and Zax. And just before I take that question, I want to say to check out their YouTube channel. I was a guest on their podcast this past Sunday. It was a lot of fun being on their show. So make sure to go and check out West Coast Podcast. Definitely highly recommend it. And yeah, that was I believe it was like the Mega Powers Explode or something like that was the caption of the thumbnail with my logo, their logo. Go and check it out. It's a really, really fun episode. But Zax asked, is the Pinnacle still a thing? I remember being forced to think at one point. Yeah, I mean, literally, the Pinnacle have kind of been almost split up as well. But there was a segment last week on AEW that I do remember where Darby Allin was attacked by a masked group in the parking lot and absolutely destroyed. And it seemed quite clear after a while it was 5 gentlemen, and one of them hit the F10, which, if I'm not mistaken, is Wardlow's finishing maneuver. And it seemed like the MJF was one of those under that mask. So I think the Pinnacle are still a thing, but just like you said there a minute ago, Tom, perhaps they're letting them do their own thing, breathe, and spread out in areas and bring them back together when perhaps needed.
There are also times, to be completely honest, when AEW book people individually without really thinking about the faction. So there are times, if that happens for an extended period of time, sort of accidentally, you kind of forget about the faction. Now, the Pinnacle, any faction involving MJF, I'm interested. I really am. So I feel there's still a long way to go and a lot of good times ahead. But it may be the case that they just let this one settle a little bit for the sake of a big moment. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, and the less you see them, the more impactful their return will be.
Absolutely. And if it is that, and that did attack Darby Allin, as we expect from last week, that could be definitely interesting, especially as well. We recently had the tag team match as well with FTR against Sting and Darby Allin in the Stadium show just last month. So they could link that pretty well together. So it'll be interesting to see how it will play out. But we do believe the Pinnacle is still a thing at this moment. Batman 901, Batman 901. It's so good. You've got to say it twice. What did you think of Bianca Belair? Spectacular, in my opinion. I think she's arguably getting to the pinnacle of WWE's women's division. I think she could be perhaps a face for years to come, but she's not quite the face just yet. Perhaps we'll do that over the next year or two. Tom, what have you found with her run this year? And I'm sure we'll probably talk about SummerSlam as well in this.
Bianca Belair is 5 years behind the 4 Horsewomen when it comes to the main roster, and yet already feels like she belongs in that company. That is testament to WWE booking a face and just really booking her right, including losing at SummerSlam. I do think that was the right call, because there is such a thing as too strong. Look at the booking of Roman Reigns. For a while, look at the booking of Drew McIntyre. People started to turn. Bianca Belair was always going to lose that championship at SummerSlam. It wasn't necessarily going to be to that person or in that manner, but she was always going to lose the championship. I think that's a good thing. I think that means she can chase. And honestly, when it comes to someone's first championship run, I think it should be brief and should be more of a test of the waters. Basically, since she arrived on the main roster, Bianca has been used perfectly. And it's very telling, I feel, that the women's division is much better at the men's division, much better than the men's division at putting over their fellows. This was absolutely perfect in every possible way. The only person I would say has been booked better has been Damian Priest.
I would say it's a good argument there. I mean, he's been associated with Bad Bunny. He's got himself a United States Championship picture. And I would say if he continues the momentum he's on, I have him as a dark horse for the Royal Rumble next year, because I think he could be a potential one you could associate with Bad Bunny at next year's WrestleMania, perhaps going for a championship.
It's a good shout. I completely agree. I'd put him in my list as well. If he loses the US Championship anytime soon, you could see him going straight to the top, at least briefly. And that little elastic bounce could help make a top-level star.
Absolutely. And just to say with Bianca Belair, obviously she's not the champion at the moment. She's got an opportunity at the SmackDown title at Crown Jewel. I can't imagine that happening unless they're going to do the good old title handover, if you want, like a pass the parcel. But I feel that with Bianca Belair, perhaps a long-term win of the Raw Women's Championship from Becky Lynch. Could you see that happening in sort of 3 to 6 months?
I could. I don't necessarily think this is a Mania match per se, but the fact that both Becky and Bianca are moving over to Raw together, they are the pinnacle of that division. It's not even close. There is a big drop after Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch. to Alexa Bliss, who's been involved recently but hasn't been involved much over the last few years. The storyline is still Becky versus Bianca. There is unfinished business there, and this will play out. I don't think she'll take the championship yet. I think after WrestleMania, we may see it revisited, but I do think Bianca Belair has a very, very bright future ahead of her.
She certainly does indeed. And if you go back just quickly before we go to our next question to when she was on Raw, drafted to SmackDown, she was struggling to get TV time, had a few vignettes of being, the strongest, the baddest, and all those other ESTs that come with it. Her year on SmackDown, take the SummerSlam bit out, you have to look at it and say that has to be one of the most successful 12-month draft moves in WWE history.
Absolutely. And a large part of the reason behind that is Bayley basically fighting her corner and saying, I want to work with this person. Bayley made that interesting. She made it good. She made us care. Sasha Banks took that ball and ran with it. It's not about the work you do in the ring. The entire wrestling field is full of quality wrestling. You can find it everywhere. It's about it's about star power, and it's about making an impact and big moments. You don't get much bigger than that first night of WrestleMania.
I have to agree. I have to agree with you indeed there. Let's go to Martin Carrillo. He says, hope we're both doing well. And his question is, with what is Tony Khan said about WWE, can WWE up the game with the next few weeks and months? So, yeah, of course, he said Raw was trash this past week. You said you didn't mind it so much, Tom. Yeah, what's your thoughts with Tony Khan here? I mean, we said we're not too against these war of words that's been said.
I'm anti saying Raw is trash. I feel that was in poor taste. I'm not going to be mad at the guy for it, but I do feel it was in poor taste. I do feel it should be a situation whereby you elevate your own show. Saying we're coming to get you, I'm behind that. Saying we're coming to get you because your show's trash, not so much. You know how fans pick up that mantle and just sling abuse and hurl abuse at each other, particularly on places like Twitter. What I will say in answer to the question, can WWE up their game within the next few weeks or months? Now, firstly, Crown Jewel looks like a hell of a card. One hell of a card. The expected matches for Survivor Series at the top, Roman Reigns versus Big E, going to be a hell of a match. Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lynch, also going to be quite exciting. I think there will be great wrestling matches, but the WWE have got themselves stuck until December, because here's the thing. They cannot create new storylines until December. They can't. They don't have the right people on the right brands yet. So, for example, the Queen of the Ring tournament, of the 8 women, 6 of them were on the wrong brand. At the same time, you've got Survivor Series coming up when it's brand versus brand. So you cannot make new storylines for people on the same brand. So you've got a whole load of people who are going to be coming across to the other show and then sat in catering for 30 days until Survivor Series is out the way at the earliest. WWE have upped their game to give us what we're getting on Friday. I feel Raw has been a lot better recently. A large part of that is that they're borrowing everyone from SmackDown. So I don't know how long-term achievable it is. I don't think we'll see something new and fresh from the WWE until after Survivor Series going into TLC. But then when we get the Royal Rumble, that's when they need to up their game properly. That's usually when they do.
Yeah, I mean, Royal Rumble season is usually when it's go time, isn't it? We've got then the WrestleMania, we've got, all them other shows in between as well. So hopefully by that point, we definitely will get that. I do think that over the next few weeks and months, WWE will up their game. But like you say, Survivor Series brings its own trickiness. And I do feel, and I wish that they would use this opportunity. I know they're building Crown Jewel now, but I wish there was just a few little tweaks of places where you can turn around and say, I'm seeing Survivor Series, making people feel like they need to represent the other side when they move shows. You could argue that with Charlotte and Becky this week on Raw, where they're already fighting each other, that could be the first tease of what we get for Survivor Series. If they were to face each other at Survivor Series, do you think it should be a chance for Becky 2 belts again?
It will not be a chance for Becky 2 belts again. My expectation is that Becky and Charlotte, right after Saudi Arabia, will simply hand each other the belts over. Although I do think what's going to happen is that one of them is going to attack the other and walk away as 2 belts. Becky's logical for that being Becky 2 belts, but Charlotte Flair is actively and very talented in being the most detestable woman in the known world. That's a real talent that she's got. As a heel, that's perfect. So she could definitely work as, oh, look, Becky, the Queen's got 2 championships. Where's yours, Becky? where I can hear it in my head. It's going to give me nightmares. That I'm going to be dreaming of it. But that could be a good build for Survivor Series. That championship handover will set things in motion. But also, they've been teasing Roman and Big E a little bit as well. The Usos this week on Raw was certainly an element of that.
Absolutely, I would have to agree with that there. And yeah, hopefully it's going to be a good show in whatever way they decide to build it. And Martin is also going to say that, do you guys think that fans are underrating the new SmackDown roster with having no big names on it? Can it be the land of opportunity again like in 2016? It's a fantastic question. And I happen to agree with Martin that it could do. Tom, how do you feel?
I completely agree. The 2016 for SmackDown was incredible, but so was 2018 when Becky had just turned heel, when we had Randy Orton and Jeff Hardy, when we had Jinder Mahal, but let's just not talk about that. And there was a number of other things really going on very well. SmackDown can deliver like this, and I always feel in WWE, smaller rosters are actually a lot more successful. We think back to Attitude Era, they were using the same people every week because they didn't have anyone else. There was a time in 1998 when WWE had about 35 wrestlers in total. In total. Some of those wrestlers, The Rock, The Undertaker, Steve Austin, were big names. But others, such as Triple H, were not big deals at the time. They just weren't. But they became that because there was a route to the top. And you know how over The Godfather was, how over the New Age Outlaws were. You had TV time guaranteed, even if you had never really wrestled much before, because they had to do that. If I look at SmackDown, yeah, there's not that many big names, but that creates an opportunity. Drew McIntyre is the only one who can take on Roman Reigns as a big name. How about Jeff Hardy? Maybe we finally see Jeff Hardy get a shot at the top again, because it's way overdue. What about Shinsuke Nakamura, a former Royal Rumble winner who's never been a world champion? He's been built up again recently. There's a lot they could do. What about Sheamus? I don't think necessarily he's going to be turning face because he does so well as a heel. But I do think Sheamus versus Nakamura could be fun. You've got Sheamus and Cesaro there. What about Cesaro going back up and having another chance? He only had the one match. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I don't have too much faith in WWE immediately taking it. But at the same time, if we get 6 months of Swerve versus Nakamura, I'm not complaining.
No, neither. I think Hit Row have got a lot of potential. They definitely, even the vignette they had on SmackDown, I just think they can connect mainstream. If they can get tick the boxes with that, even though some of them are inexperienced, that could turn out to be a real coup in the draft and could be something we're talking about in 12 months' time and going, wow, what a steal that was and what a great move that was at that time. And like you said, there is lots of potential as stars you can move up a level. So when it comes to 12 months from now, the sin is a big deal again. I'd love to see Jeff Hardy as a big deal once again, but I am frightened of the prospect of Willow. I won't lie about that. Was you a Willow fan back in the day before we go to our next question?
Going to be blunt, I'm not really familiar with Willow. I wasn't really watching wrestling at that time. I came back in around 2014, 16, somewhere in that region. Yeah, it was just before. I'm not sure. I don't want to put my hat on it, as it were. But when it comes to that and the Willow character, I've not really had much experience of it. But honestly, in today's climate, as it were, the occult and the strange characters, they're dying out. And I don't necessarily think it's a good thing, because the WWE wants wild characters and, the things that really stick in your mind. When I came back, it was Battleground. I think it was Battleground 2014. It was Brock Lesnar versus Seth Rollins in the main event. So it was during the Seth Rollins title reign, the first one.
Yeah.
I skipped through John Cena versus Kevin Owens. Apparently a great wrestling match. I don't know. You know what kept me watching? Seth Rollins doing backflips out of German suplexes, because that was cool. You know what kept me watching? Bray Wyatt's entrance. Bray Wyatt's entrance with the lantern, the family, the fireflies. That stands out. Jeff Hardy can definitely make that happen. But at the same time, he also has a lot of long-term nostalgia appeal. He's an Attitude Era guy after all. And I think they've spread out their former Attitude Era guys pretty well at this point. Edge will get a push. Jeff Hardy will get a push.
Interesting indeed. Yeah, I look forward to seeing what your reaction will be if that character was to debut at some point there. But like you say, it's good to know. It's good to see what is of an appeal as well. And that's something that wrestling fans can look forward to seeing with the new talent that will be on SmackDown coming shortly. And SC Williams is saying, that's just what I would do. And I think you'll hate the idea. Let's hear it out first off before I start judging it. But Tom, what I would do is have Sonya and Naomi face off. And Sonya says, I'm not wrestling, and bring out Cameron, Naomi's former friend. Do you know what? I don't hate it. I like it. I think it'd be great fun.
I don't hate it. I think back to when Heath Slater came out to challenge Drew McIntyre way back when in the Dolph Ziggler feud. If it's a 1 week thing, I'd be absolutely fine with that. I'd be
Yeah.
absolutely fine. It would benefit Cameron. It would benefit us with the history. It would benefit the Sonya Deville feud. I also think there's a certain imagery there that really does work out with the idea of what Sonya Deville's doing. It would be on the nose, as it were, but those are always the best storylines for me. I don't hate it. I actually quite like it, SC.
I like it, yeah. I hope it happens. That's how much I like it, because I think it's got a lot of potential there. And Cameron, obviously, last year was a part of the AEW Women's Tag Team Tournament, so she has been back in the ring in recent times. So, yeah, let's hope it can happen. Marta Guerrero, why hasn't Johnny Gargano not the way been seen for a bit now on NXT? They scrapped the way, leaving Indy to go her own separate way. Well, Austin Theory, of course, has gone to Raw. I think that's the first off. Johnny Gargano's contract is coming up. We're going to be asking Tom about that in a couple of seconds. And of course, Candice LeRae is pregnant, expecting a baby boy. So that's why she's not in the ring at the moment. And it could be partly of why Johnny's not around either. But Johnny kind of hasn't actually been in attendance in, I don't know what they call it these days, the CWC, the new NXT arena, since the first episode, since the wedding. He's been in a couple of video packages, including the honeymoon, but he's not been seen since. Is Johnny Gargano on the way out? I meant that.
The WWE have a challenge ahead of them. The challenge is in convincing Johnny Gargano to leave NXT, but not leave WWE, because he has no interest in doing so. Same with Tommaso Ciampa, no interest whatsoever. That puts the WWE in a very difficult position. People are openly stating that their developmental brand is better than their main roster, that the pinnacle of wrestling that they expect Raw and SmackDown to be kind of isn't, and it's their own wrestlers doing that. So I don't know if contract negotiations have started yet. I know they're coming up, but there have been discussions happening between Johnny Gargano and officials in NXT to sort of lay the groundwork, see what he's after, so that they can pitch something that he would be interested in. Success rate has not been fantastic as of yet. Now, the reason he is off is mostly because of what you've mentioned, a baby on the way, there's a lot going on, and a lot that needs sorting out in the build-up to it. And honestly, he's not really needed for storyline right now. The Indy Hartwell story can play itself out without him being involved. That's a good thing. But when we were talking about call-ups way back when, I mentioned Austin Theory was definitely one who was considering it, but I was being told repeatedly, the way are not coming up. The way are not, under any circumstances, coming up. Johnny Gargano does not want to. And that puts the WWE in a very difficult position, because they may decide to cut their losses, but they need to decide if he's worth keeping around and just keeping him quiet compared to what he would do, for example, if he was wrestling Bryan Danielson in AEW.
Is it bad that I want that to happen?
No, not at all.
It would be an amazing match, wouldn't it? But the thing is, for me, Johnny Gargano, Johnny Wrestling, he's been tight with HBK, Triple H, and everyone there. He seems to be really stuck in with the notions of things of what NXT was. But this new NXT going forward doesn't seem like we're not waiting around anymore. Like you said, you can't just be in NXT for 4 or 5 years. What's going to happen? And if I had to put you on the spot right now, Tom, and I'm going to be that guy, will he re-sign with WWE, or will he go to potentially give me a dream match that I really, really want to see?
With no guarantees and speculation on my part, I think the WWE will cave on this one. He will sign a new contract with NXT, and I think a lot of people are going to be earning a lot more money in NXT in the near future. That said, I think they'll put clauses in that see him move to the main roster after the birth of his child.
Interesting. Well, the thing is, it would be a good payday as well if he was to stay around in WWE, and obviously security would surely be a thing that would be tempting for him to stick around.
Definitely, yeah, the job security would be very much worth it, but it depends who else might be in his ear at the moment, because he does have lots of friends in lots of different companies, and even though they can't officially offer a contract, they can certainly randomly mention some numbers in his ear.
Oh, I think we'll leave that there. That's almost teasing enough to come back to that for another day there, I think. And this week in Metropolis says, evening chaps, hope you're both well. We're very well, thank you. Thank you for checking out the stream. Hope you're doing well. A fantastic podcast, by the way. Did their first live stream yesterday, and also it was fantastic and fun to watch. So make sure to go check that out if you haven't already. Supersonic X says there are some of the women that might be ready to return come the Royal Rumble. Might see Alexa Bliss. Asuka, Bayley, Paige all might return. And my goodness, wouldn't that be a whole host of surprises, big names coming into the Rumble, should we not have them on TV for that long?
It certainly would be. Alexa Bliss, I think, may come back beforehand, but if they don't have a storyline for her, we've spoken about they can't really create new storylines until December time. Why would you then bring her back, have her create a new storyline, and then the Royal Rumble's coming? That's a big reset. You don't really want to waste that, as it were. So I would personally bring her back in the Rumble. Asuka, the same. I do expect that would be a great launch pad for her. Bayley's my hope. I did put a video on YouTube about Bayley's return schedule. I won't go into too much detail based on that, but you can always check it out yourself over on my channel. Paige, however, I am confident she will be returning to wrestling soon for someone other than WWE.
Interesting. And wherever that might be, someone that's going head to head on a Friday night this week.
I cannot begin to speculate. I just believe it won't be for WWE because the WWE will not clear her.
Interesting. We'll have to see how it will play out. But certainly if those names were to be in the Rumble, goodness, what a women's Rumble it would be. C Nation Dog says, people get mad when people have short title reigns, but the Attitude Era had a lot of short title reigns and mostly the tag team champions. Very good point. I mean, where do you stand with championship title runs? Should they be long ones, like a year, like Roman Reigns, or should they be short term? Should we have a hot potato here and there just to spice things up and make us feel that a title change can happen at any point?
I do believe it should be a mix. It's worth saying here that, at least in my opinion, title belts are just another tool to get someone over. Much like being a face or a heel, it's just another way to get someone over. Being the champion should get you over by extension. Having Bianca Belair with the championship was a big deal. It was a showing of faith, and she looked damn good with that belt. Look at Big E right now. Looks damn good with that belt. It's doing him favors. But a championship belt is only worth what its heritage says. So, for example, you can always lean back on everyone who's won the Intercontinental Championship and say, this is helping Shinsuke Nakamura right now. But is Nakamura above it? Is he beyond it? In which case, shouldn't he be handing it over? It was a very good championship reign for the US Championship when it comes to Sheamus, for example. But he got a benefit. If you look at how it's laid out, I think this was a really good trajectory. Bobby Lashley did wonders for that championship belt. He really reinvigorated that championship. He lost it to Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle felt the benefit. So Bobby Lashley helps the championship. The championship helps Matt Riddle. Then we swap to Sheamus. Sheamus helps the championship. Now it's with Damian Priest. The championship helps Damian Priest. So it depends where you are on that spectrum. The way I see it, you should have long championship reigns if someone is helping the belt to become top tier, and short championship reigns if the belt is helping someone else become top tier. That's my personal preference. That's just how I would book a show. But this is one of the reasons that the SmackDown Women's Championship right now is worth more than the WWE Championship, particularly when you look at that WrestleMania main event. Sasha Banks and that SmackDown Women's Championship were booked ahead of Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre in the WWE Championship, simply because it meant more for that belt.
Absolutely. I don't think I can add more to that. You said it perfectly, in my opinion, there. And like you say, a good mixture just gives that unpredictability factor as well, which is excitement for a show. But like you say, it's all about that importance of making those titles mean something and making it mean for superstars as well. And the US title and the SmackDown Women's title, two very good, fine examples mentioned there. Sinister Dog also goes to say, if Roman Reigns beats Brock Lesnar at Crown Jewel, he would be the third guy to beat Brock Lesnar twice under Seth Rollins and Goldberg. Interesting. Sinister Dog, always a man with the stats there. Do you think it'll be one and done with Roman and Brock?
I think this is one of the longest feuds that the WWE have had. They keep coming back to this well of Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar. In this individual match, yeah, I think it'll be one and done. I think Roman will win, not necessarily conclusively, but I think he'll win. And at that point, Brock Lesnar will probably either vanish for a little while until the Rumble or have one story on Raw. I'd like to see, I think if you're regular on my channels, you'll be fully aware that I would love to see Brock versus Bobby. I've been speaking about the idea of Bobby Lashley getting that US Championship back. Imagine how much good it'll do for the championship if you have Lashley versus Lesnar for the US Championship, for example. But I don't think Brock would forgive Roman Reigns so quickly. I do think we're in a situation where Paul Heyman is the big playing piece here. I don't know how that's going to go, but I'm confident that Roman Reigns is not losing the championship until after WrestleMania.
But I would have to agree with that. I think the Reigns definitely retains it at this point. And I mean, I could even see him perhaps fighting Goldberg actually before he loses the belt as well. But I have earmarked SummerSlam as the place currently that Roman Reigns could drop that belt next year. But yeah, we'll probably go in an obvious direction of why that possibly might be.
Yes, we will. I think we're both on the exact same page here. If SummerSlam is coming to the UK, then Drew McIntyre winning a Universal Championship at SummerSlam would certainly make a very big impact.
Certainly, and 30 years after the British Bulldog defeating Bret Hart in the main event as well, definitely would have its. It would be that big moment as well. It would definitely get Drew as an all-time main eventer going forward. Russell Wildridge, he says, excited for the Inspirations debut and Impact, as am I. It's going to be great to see them let loose. Do you think they'll win the titles at Bound for Glory? Now, that's an interesting proposition. Could they be like an additional tag team added to the Knockouts Tag Team Championship match? How would you like to see the Inspiration used in Impact?
I think they bring a lot to the table, largely when it comes to speaking. When it comes to in-ring, I'd probably give them that tag team championship run, just not yet, because I always believe someone who just comes in and immediately wins championships is sort of burying the division a little bit. So I personally wouldn't do that. What I would be doing is moving them towards Deonna Purrazzo and quickly, because Deonna Purrazzo has been the champion for a long, long time. I feel we need a change at the top, and I feel she could benefit from that as well, despite the fact she's been a very, very good champion. So I would be very excited to see them involved in some capacity there. But logically, having them as your tag team champions, knowing that they're an established draw compared to ultimately what is a very good women's division, but doesn't have a lot of top tier stars, I feel a lot of people are going to benefit from the WWE releases. This is Impact's chance, and I feel it's a perfect time to launch that.
Absolutely, yeah. I think eventually the tag titles would definitely be in their future. I would like to see him, if it was me, I'd like to see him confront the champions. I think that's a good way. Like you said, talking is their real strength there. Just to get the pop when they come in on that first night, I think would be quite fun just to see as a nice little stare down and a bit of a, you've got to be joking me seeing this, tag team division and that. I think it could be quite a good fun start to see. And before we go moving on, we know my Australian accent is absolutely terrible. Ricky Glow is in the house. He says, I highly doubt it, but WWE do. But since Oscar's injured and Alexa's written off TV, to use different women now on Raw and SmackDown after the Saudi pay-per-view, what do you think, guys? So I'm guessing perhaps maybe like Tegan Knox, maybe Shotzi, Tony Storm. We should get them on more on TV, shouldn't we?
I completely agree that we should. I don't necessarily think we will for a number of reasons. Tegan Knox and Shotzi Blackheart, let's use them as a perfect example. Tony Storm, also a perfect example. They were drafted without a plan. There wasn't a plan. There was no idea. They were just there and they needed to be drafted somewhere. That's basically fair to say for everyone who was drafted on Raw Talk or Talking Smack. There wasn't a plan. It was just like, okay, we'll try and do something with them and see what happens. That's happened with a number of different wrestlers. Now, with the Royal Rumble coming, we will start to see people pushed simply to say, oh, what if they win? But I think the only person who's really going to get a renewed push in a way that will actually have a major impact is Shayna Baszler.
I have to agree with that, and I do hope that, for like you said there, that those faces will get used. I can't believe just one of them names is Shotzi Blackheart with the tank. Surely that would get over with the younger audience. That seems like a no-brainer to me.
But what would you be doing with her other than having a tank? That's the issue they've got.
I suppose, but they found a route in NXT. They made her as that sort of underdog story, getting her into credible positions to then go for the championship, losing. I don't know. They're just, yeah, I suppose I'd need perhaps a bit of time to think of a good storyline for her. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel that to not have a plan, it just feels that maybe they've lost their way. But speaking of the way, is Indy Hartwell's tag team partner now in the way? I believe not. I believe that they're kind of, like you said, they're just kind of quietening down on the faction for the time being and just letting Indy go on her own.
That is exactly accurate from the best I can tell. The way has not been disbanded, but when it does come back, it will come back very different. They are letting people move in their own circles and sort of preparing for life after Johnny Gargano, just in case. Much like they're doing with Kevin Owens right now, they're preparing for life after him, even though he is still there and might well be there in future.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've got a couple of match suggestions that have come flying in from Ricky Glow. Mustafa Ali against Nakamura for the IC title will be awesome. That would be an awesome match, wouldn't it? I'd really like to see that. Mustafa Ali, of course. Now, I mean, he's had that breakup with Mansoor this week on Raw. I thought Mustafa Ali did his best work on SmackDown when he was there previously. And in fact, he was even almost like the number 2 to Roman Reigns at one point. I think the last time they did Crown Jewel over there back in 2019 was that sort of 10-man tag thing they did way back when. Do you think Mustafa Ali can have a renewed push on SmackDown? Or, like you said, being one of these talking smack guys, he's there probably just to take some falls?
I definitely think he can have a renewed push. However, he was drafted as a tag team. The tag team's already broken up. So things have already changed for what's going to be happening there. I thought we were going to see Ali and Mansoor win the tag team championships in Saudi Arabia. But instead, Ali will certainly be the perfect heel for Mansoor to lose that match. That said, I think this is exactly right from Ricky. Ali versus Nakamura will be a fantastic match. Ali can have those wrestling matches with a number of opponents. I think it's a shame that people like Finn Balor have been moved away. Balor versus Ali would have been a great one for me.
Well, yeah.
My worry is what we're going to get is 8 months of Ali versus Ricochet on 205 Live, and then everyone just moves on with their day. I hope he's used in a way to elevate him, but I feel outside of Nakamura and maybe Swerve, there aren't many people above him that he will be likely lined up with.
Interesting, yeah. I mean, like you say, it would be a shame if he was spending a lot of his time on 205 Live. I mean, he's an incredible talent. I do think he could be pushed a lot better and a lot better use. And that certainly that match there suggested by Ricky would be a very good one. And Joshi Pro in the house as well. Going with Bryan Danielson and Minoru Suzuki. We've got the wow factor with this match once again. There, another excited face for it. Just very quickly, we said earlier in the stream how we are very excited for it. Tom, scale of 1 to 10 of how excited you are for this match?
I'll give it a solid 8. I'm a big Minoru Suzuki fan. He's no Toru Yano. Yano's my boy, but Suzuki is certainly something you don't find anywhere else. He really is. And that's a wonder that New Japan has. They have a lot of wrestlers that you don't find the like anywhere else. I think the only people anything like Minoru Suzuki are also in New Japan in Tomohiro Ishii, who I once seriously damaged my ankle rocking out to his theme tune. Check it out if you can. And of course, Shingo Takagi. So having Bryan Danielson in that position, it's not just paying off on what's been promised to Bryan Danielson, it's what's been promised to us as well.
Absolutely. I cannot wait for it. You mentioned Yano there. I'd love Yano to come through the forbidden door, trying to sell that DVD in the American market. Why couldn't it be done? It should be. That'd be a fantastic little watch, wouldn't it?
It would be. And he's a YouTuber now, as I'm sure you know.
Oh, I did not know. Well, you know, I'm going straight after this. Just a little subscribe button. But just to remind everyone as well that they should also be subscribing to Tom Colohue if they haven't already. You can see there on the bottom of your screen right now and in the description as well, the links to both his YouTube and Twitch channels. But do stick around with us for a little bit more. We're going to take some questions that we've got left in, and then we're going to just talk a little bit just before we close off the show today. So West Coast Pop saying then with all that we know about the issues surrounding the Saudi shows, should more stars stand against them? Oh, very interesting question from Zach here. Tom, what's your stance on this?
I actually have a bit of a storied history when it comes to Saudi Arabia in general. I am a trade unionist by nature over here in the UK. I went to a trade union conference and actually stood up and said I wanted our government and our union by extension to lobby that government to stop selling weapons that Saudi Arabia and that country and their government were using to murder people. Because I believe that the UK government in selling those is complicit in that. I think a lot of wrestlers should be standing up more. I think a lot of people should be standing up more. And even though I'm going to be not watching as my own mini protest and it won't mean much to them, I do not support this personally, and I don't think many people should be supporting this.
I think that's fair, and I think that's understandable there. Zach, let us know how your stance is on it in the comments below. Would be interested to know your thoughts and feelings as well. Supersonic X saying, who will Charlotte Flair feud with after Crown Jewel? Someone on the SmackDown side that WWE can push. Shayna Baszler, if she wins the Queen's Crown, could be potentially one, or maybe a babyface Sasha Banks. What's your thoughts? Who's first in line for the Queen after Crown Jewel? We know Becky Lynch, I suppose, would be the one, but after that, we should say.
Yeah, so basically after Survivor Series, my expectation is that we are going to see Shayna Baszler come first, and that's a shame because I feel whoever comes first will lose, and that's a shame, as I say. Sasha Banks, I don't see a face turn too soon in her future. They'll need time to lay that out, but I do think we're going to see Sasha versus Charlotte again moderately soon. Baszler, for me, should be a long-term opponent, but I do think they'll fly through that pretty quickly. There aren't that many other babyfaces on SmackDown. My hope, though, is that we can see someone who isn't regularly used all that much get an actual opportunity. Liv Morgan's moved across now, but she would have been perfect in that role. Just a 1 month feud. My suspicion personally is that Charlotte Flair will not feature on the TLC card, and it won't be until the Royal Rumble that we really see her involved again.
Interesting. We'll have to see how it's going to play out. I hope Sasha Banks, but like you say, someone like a 1 month feud like a Liv Morgan would have been perfect. And I still would love to see Tony Storm in that spot. But judging on what we're seeing with the booking, it's not going to happen. That's just, I think, how we have to leave it. Ricky Glow, lol, SCW's face expression for Lashley versus Brock for the US belt. I must admit, I was wowed indeed. It would elevate that championship just so much more. He says he likes that idea as well. But what about Twitter? If Lashley was to beat Brock, oh my God, WWE is predictable. Wouldn't it be the right move if Lashley was to win that match?
It would absolutely be the right move if Lashley was to win that match. Brock Lesnar should be doing a few jobs, and he should be doing quite a few jobs right now before getting into a position where he can deliver something new and go for championships himself. As regards Twitter, I'm going to be really diplomatic here. Twitter is a dumpster fire where good ideas go to die, and there are basically no redeeming features about the whole concept. So honestly, WWE can't win. AEW can't win. I can't win. You can't win. It's Twitter. Nobody wins on Twitter. It's just a lot of people trying to shout over each other. I'd love the match. I'd be hyped for it. Even if it is predictable that Lashley wins, predictable isn't necessarily a bad thing. Because when you look at Hangman Page, perfect example, it is predictable that he will be the next AEW champion. I'd still be happy with it.
I just wish you'd said what you really thought about Twitter. I just felt you held back a little
bit.
Yeah,
I held back as best I could, yeah.
I really did. But do you know what? I have to agree with you. It is a shouting competition, isn't it, on Twitter? I must admit, I don't say I've lost love for Twitter because I think it's very handy for, obviously, to communicate with the people that aren't shouting over on top of one another. I enjoy my interactions with the people that I do interact with. But yeah, I do agree that unfortunately Twitter can be a bit of a toxic environment amongst the wrestling side of things. And I would be very happy with that match. And like you said there, things that are predictable sometimes make the most sense. And Hangman Page becoming the next champion makes the most sense. I wouldn't be against that move if that was to go down. I wouldn't be against this match if it was to go down. And if it was for the US title, do you know what? It's going to be a hell of a job whoever beats that person of one of them two to get the belt. But do you know what? At the same time, doesn't that elevate that superstar?
Absolutely it does, and absolutely it should.
That's what it's all about. Joshi Pro has got a few comments in for us. He says, Roman is not losing that title, period. I don't care what anyone says. He shouldn't lose that belt for at least another year. We agreed another year. We thought SummerSlam 2022 would be that potential destination. Although at the moment, if you said another year, that would be Crown Jewel 2022. So yeah, certainly is quite a way away. And he will remain ahead of the table for quite some time. As well as that, Jinder Mahal is winning King of the Ring this year. The finals are in Saudi. You heard it here first. What's your thought with King of the Ring? Who do you think will be the winner if I had to put you on the spot, Tom?
I don't personally see a correlation between Jinder Mahal and Saudi Arabia. Firstly, he's Canadian, and secondly, he's been booked as Indian the entire time, which is just baffling in so many ways. Very, very different situation. But for me, Finn Balor's got to be the guy. He's got to be the guy. He was introduced as the Demon rather than the Demon King for Extreme Rules. He's newly back to the brand, and he just suffered a big loss. If he's going to be up there competing for championships, he needs a big moment to get there. King of the Ring, perfect for me for Finn Balor. As much as I want to see Xavier Woods get it, I think it's too soon. It's a bit too predictable on that point. And even though we'll get a really positive outcome from it, I would prefer to see it in maybe 2 years when we've all sort of given up it's ever going to happen. Then he has something to overcome.
Yeah, like you say, if he lost in the final, for example, so close, but yeah, he has got that last hurdle one more time would be quite fun. I think that will be the final, Finn Balor versus Xavier Woods. And one thing interesting to note as well that you mentioned there with Finn Balor, he was the Demon King when he was first called up to the main roster all them years ago. He's now just the Demon. Was there a reason they dropped the word King for a little while?
Well, the obvious suggestion would be because he's going to become King of the Ring, but I think a lot of it actually comes down to a differentiation. The Demon King was undefeated on the main roster. They can always say that this demon is slightly different. It's very WWE to do that. I think it's them leaving their options open, but I don't think it's a good thing.
I think that's a fair comment that's been made there. Joshi also goes on to say that the Queen of the Ring matches or Queen's Crown matches have been terrible. Roman's entrance alone are longer than all the matches on the SmackDown side. They were indeed. And in total, I think was 8 minutes and something for all 4 matches.
Yeah.
I think that is probably shorter than the Undertaker WrestleMania entrance. Tom, it needs to improve, doesn't it, surely?
Absolutely. It's a complete travesty that this is happening. There was one match which was logically short, that being Dana Brooke versus Shayna Baszler. There's a reason for that. The push and the squash was intentional. Outside of that, why on earth have you not given them something to work with? Just give them 5 minutes. Something to actually do, because you've got very, very talented wrestlers there. We saw Liv Morgan versus Carmella at Extreme Rules. They put on a great wrestling match for 10, 15 minutes. Let them rinse and repeat. I'm happy. You didn't need to do what happened there. You absolutely didn't.
No, I have to agree. And I think WWE need to do better in this spot. We said about WWE improving earlier in the video, and I think one area they need to improve on is certainly here. It's not enough. One thing I will just say, is actually, because it's just coming in my brain, it's something I thought about when watching other streams as well, and Tom, I will ask you while you're here. With the Queen's Crown tournament, obviously the final being at Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia, is there a possibility that all matches are being shown because they to be aware of who will be in the final? Is that a reason and a cop-out reason of why these matches could be short?
Sorry, can I just clarify what you're meaning? Are you expecting all matches will be shown in Saudi Arabia?
Well, potentially, because obviously we have the final in Saudi Arabia, and obviously if they don't have long matches or are not keen on perhaps say having long matches and need to be aware of the final, is this the reason why WWE is booking these matches so short?
The WWE have been prohibited from showing any of those matches on the basis of the attire that the women in them are wearing.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Obviously, when it comes to the final, the attire would be different. So, yeah, WWE just need to do better. That's pretty much the answer to that.
Yeah.
Wrestle by Waldridge, do you think WWE's plan for global expansion of NXT is still a plan going forward? Tom, this is definitely one for you.
There are still many plans in play for a global expansion of NXT. However, Nick Khan has already begun to shut down any arm of the company that is not directly making profit, bringing it all back in-house. The previous system was to essentially, much like multiple YouTube channels as they get bigger, they would have multiple brands and arms. So there was a direct WWE UK subsidiary. However, it made, shall we say, minus figures in numbers, in an actual income. It was not a good thing for the company. NXT Asia was set up as a completely separate entity, made minus figures for the company because they sold 0 tickets but were paying Kairi Sane the entire time. So breaking them down is a positive in that regard because it brings it back in-house and it hides the numbers that they are losing, because what they want by doing this is to hide anything that makes them look like they're not successful. Helps the stock price, helps their income, helps any potential future buyers. There is still every plan to expand going forwards, but it will be under the WWE umbrella. There are unlikely now to be new shows launched, especially when shows like NXT UK and 205 Live are... Well, if the ratings of Raw are bad, then the ratings of those shows can be just gently described as absolutely atrocious.
I think you're bang on the money there. Yeah, it'd be interesting how it would be going forward. And like you said, that is the plan. How they will do it, we'll have to see over time. We're going to take just a couple of questions just to finish off, and then me and Tom will finish off by having a quick little discussion to finish up the stream today. Ricky Glow says, one last question for him. How do we feel about Tony D'Angelo lately? Are you a fan or do you like Bron Breakker more? Personally, I like both. I wish Bron Breakker had the style in the name, but hey, it is what it is. But I think in ring, he looks like the real deal. I think he almost could be main roster ready, and I would even say he'll be called up this time next year to Raw or SmackDown. That's how highly I think of him. Tony D'Angelo, yeah, he seems an entertaining figure. I did have a little giggle of the idea of someone being locked in the car boot this week. Yeah, what were your thoughts of these characters, Tom?
I think we're going to see call-ups a lot faster going forwards. So I feel these two could both make it fairly soon. However, I personally have not seen enough of them to really make a decision. Bron Breakker is certainly earning a lot of plaudits, but is a very fresh face. And I feel it is possible that he's been pushed a little bit too hard just for now.
I'll be interested to see if he does win that championship when it comes to Halloween Havoc. And of course, it's still very early doors. And we have here Rest of Ultra saying, geez, imagine Twitter after these Friday events. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting place to say the very least. I may just do the Homer Simpson meme where he just sort of goes back into the bush I think that's what I will probably do. Or just come and see it on Saturday when it's all taking place and just feel it's a happy, safe place once again and just put my questions out for the Q&A.
Yeah.
West Coast Pub does say he refuses to watch the Saudi Arabia shows, says that he feels long-term contract is signed to insult the specific talent and openly accepting blood money is disgusting. I hope that the flight works out better this year too. Yeah, let's hope that things do work out better. Obviously, the last time they were stuck there for all that long time there. But Zach, thank you for sharing your opinion on the situation. Judge Process King Ricochet. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, did it? It's a shame that it didn't happen.
Good match.
And of course, it was a very good match, and hopes that Shayna Baszler does win it as well. Yeah, we've got a couple of questions, new ones in here from Elijah as well. Let's get him on the show. He says, "What if Finn's and Woods is to be in the finals?" And this is what I would do. Swerve, you guys, let Woods slap Finn until Finn snaps and possibly heel turn, and then Finn wins, but Finn challenges Big E next, and I would write Woods off TV to make Big E mad, in my opinion. Well, an interesting connection there, using those New Day members to get Finn Balor into that program, into a match with Big E. Could that work for you?
I am really unhappy with the booking of Finn Balor on the main roster, largely because I literally reported step for step exactly what was going to happen. And it's one of those. When Finn Balor first moved down to NXT, I was the guy who reported we will not see the Demon King in NXT. Finn Balor wasn't happy with the way it was used. It became a crutch. A couple of days later, he confirmed this in an interview with Stephanie Chase. He comes back to the main roster, literally a couple of days later, got another report out there. They're bringing back the Demon King. They're going back to the previous booking. The extraordinary man who does extraordinary things. Finn Balor becomes a loser. The Demon King becomes a winner. Now, they haven't quite done that. But that was my fear. And Finn Balor still looks like a hell of a loser given how it's gone so far. In NXT, Finn was perfect. Neither a heel nor a face. He was just Finn Balor. I'd like that. I feel it's maybe a bit too much at this point to turn him heel, though beating Xavier Woods, even clean and with no heel tendencies, would probably get people booing. So that may be an idea. And I do think we'll see Finn versus Big E. But I don't have faith in the WWE when it comes to the booking of Finn Balor to get it right. I'm just going to lay the cards on the table there. I don't think they have any chance of getting it right with Finn Balor. I think it's going down the card pretty sharp.
Unfortunately, I do agree with you. It's something I did say when he first came back to SmackDown, that program to Roman was too soon, and there's only one direction it's going to go from here. And obviously how it did play out probably wasn't the best or strongest booked either. So yeah, it was a shame the way it did play out the end of Extreme Rules. And let's hope that with a move to Raw, is there any truth actually to the reports? There's been reports suggesting that Finn Balor, someone from the Raw Creative wanted him to be the next Drew McIntyre on that sort of stage. Is there any truth in that you're aware of?
I can't confirm one way or the other, but I think it's very telling that the report stated that one writer wanted a big push. There are a lot of writers in that room.
Yeah, there's probably usually about 24 writers, isn't there? So yeah, probably another place where it's hard to get your voice heard, I can imagine, if we're being brutally honest. But let's go for just one or two more comments then before we wrap things up. It says, what are some of the matches you want to see on Raw and SmackDown when Saudi pay-per-view is done in your pay-per-view? SCW, are you ready for Punk versus Seidel? I can't wait for Suzuki versus Bryan. Both of those matches sound awesome. I'm really looking forward to both of them. But one question I will say, I do think Punk versus Seidel is going to be a great match, and I do think both matches seem predictable. But do you think if AEW wanted to get more of a rating, if you want, for this live Rampage, should Punk have faced a big name if they wanted to try and challenge the ratings for SmackDown, or do you feel that this match is suffice enough to do so for what AEW does?
Well, I was of the opinion that they were trying to beat SmackDown with their usual show, and their usual show is usually good enough, as it were, to be entertaining at least, and that would mean not hot-shotting certain matches. But then they gave us Bryan Danielson and Minoru Suzuki on free YouTube, and they're clearly hot-shotting matches, much as WWE is doing with Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks. I think the Punk could be up against a bigger opponent, as it were, but I think this Rampage will have eyes on it, and that will do very good things for Matt Sydal, who is a lower down the card name here. It depends on the finish of the match, and it depends what the future is.
I think so, indeed. I think you bang on the money with that. But I do think both matches are going to be fantastic. I cannot wait for them. What are some of the matches that you want to see on Raw SmackDown when the Saudi pay-per-view is done? Obviously, we'll be going towards Survivor Series. What matches would you quite like to see?
I would definitely like to see Baszler versus Charlotte. I think that's coming, and I'm very excited for it. At the same time, Bayley versus Becky, whenever that comes back, I would definitely like that one. I'm starting with the women's matches because the women's divisions are just a bit more exciting right now. I do feel we're going to get more Usos versus New Day. Nothing wrong with that. I would have loved to see Usos versus Ali and Mansoor. I really would have liked to see that. But hey, I believe Viking Raiders went to SmackDown, so there's some new opportunities there and new possibilities for what we could see. Roman versus Nakamura is on my agenda. I'm excited for Swerve versus Nakamura, sure, but Roman Nakamura is on my agenda. Bobby versus Brock. And I'm excited for another round of Seth versus Finn.
I like the sound of a lot of these matches. I would definitely be down for a lot of them. I want to see Keith Lee get a push under the Bearcat gimmick when he comes back. I want to see what he can do. Particularly a Keith Lee versus Big E match really does appetize for me. I think that would be awesome to watch if and when it does go down. I want to see Damien Priest against Karrion Kross. That's something I would quite like to see as well. Perhaps it could be if they can get the Karrion Kross gimmick correctly, I think that Kross could be a name that could work well to dethrone Priest if Priest was to be moved on towards the main event scene if he was to win the Royal Rumble. But hey, I'm fantasy booking far too ahead of myself, and some of that will probably not happen. But hey, let's go to a couple more comments. And just before we finish off, Finn Balor and AJ Styles' debut in AEW in 2023 is Joshi's Pros prediction. Is it a prediction or a spoiler, Tom? Would you say that could be something that could happen in the future?
In Finn Balor's case, I believe that's possible, but unlikely. In AJ Styles' case, he's openly said that this will be his last wrestling contract.
Interesting. So perhaps not for AJ then. And Swerve Scott Killshot versus Ricochet Prince Puma on SmackDown for the IC Championship. You know, I'd love to see. It's a Lucha Underground theme there. I'm a big Lucha Underground fan, so yeah, I would love to see that. And we will have. Oh, just quickly going to take this one up as well. Pete Dunne versus Sheamus and Pete versus Drew and Pete versus Nakamura. That definitely would be ones to whet the appetite for sure. But Pete Dunne, should he have been called up in your view?
It's a difficult one. Pete Dunne, I don't necessarily know where he would slot in at the moment. I'd like to see him wrestle a number of people. Dunne versus Nakamura is obviously a very interesting and open opportunity, but I don't know whether he would be face or heel, and I don't know his contract status. We haven't had any more information on that, so I'm not 100% on what's even happening backstage at this point.
Interesting. So I thought he would have kept with Ridge Holland. I thought that definitely would have been something there. Last one, then we'll call up then. What do you think is going to happen on SmackDown this week, in your opinion? And Tom, well, he obviously goes on to mention there the idea of that tag team division there, and some Pete Dunne matches as well. Yeah, so this week on SmackDown, let's just quickly go through what we think then. So we think Finn Balor is going to defeat Sami Zayn. Who do you feel happen with Carmella and Zelina Vega?
I think Zelina Vega wins it. Ultimately, she needs the rub a little bit more. Though Carmella is a more established name, whoever does go forward is probably getting mauled by Shayna Baszler. So I think Zelina Vega, having picked up a few wins, finally gets her momentum cut off pretty sharp.
Interesting stuff indeed. I had Carmella to win this one just purely because I think that, yeah, like you say, she could easily take the squash and it wouldn't harm her as much in Saudi. I think she's losing. Whoever faces Shane, I think is losing in about a minute and a half. I don't see it being a long match at all. And elsewhere, then we've got Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch. I've gone for a false finish. I think Bianca Belair will be involved in some format, but should be an awesome match if it's given the full half an hour. What are your thoughts?
Same thing. Charlotte getting involved, Bianca getting involved, ending up on a big scrap between all four. We're getting close to go home show territory for the SmackDown side. This is the go home show, so now's the time to push that triple threat. I'm sure we'll see them all on Raw, but at the same time, now's the time to get it done.
Absolutely, indeed. And we said as well, potentially Sonya Deville may not be the one in ring this week against Naomi. Perhaps she gets someone to take the place. And it seemed in the comments earlier, we liked the idea of Cameron, although that probably may not happen, but it's something that we would quite like to see.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to shake things up a little bit. I think that presents us with an opportunity for that. But I think it's also possible that with Liv Morgan being eliminated the way she was, Sonya Deville decides to play with two people who she screwed over in the past and put Naomi versus Liv Morgan just to really put the cat amongst the pigeons. Absolutely. And Brock Lesnar will be in the house as well. Obviously, one last chance to push that match against Roman at Crown Jewel as well. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But that's pretty much it for our comments there. Just going to say Volta versus Keith Lee. Anyone? Yes, please. Would definitely love to see that. So that's pretty much it for all our Q&A questions there. Tom, thank you so much for answering all of those. Just quickly, before we do close up today, I would like to just get you just tell everyone about your channels, if you don't mind, and everything you do so people know. Yeah, no worries. I'm obviously very used to this at this point. I am Tom Colohue, for anyone who doesn't know. I am a streamer both on YouTube and on Twitch. Essentially, on Twitch, we have Mondays and Friday shows, both Raw and SmackDown watch parties, but also Spoiler Warning, which happens at 10 p.m. UK time or 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over in the US. That's our news show, where not only can you ask questions, and we are Ask Me Anything, you can ask me whatever you want, but I also bring news to the table that sometimes you can't find anywhere else. We've been tracking the Sonya Deville return schedule ahead of time. We've been tracking Bayley's return schedule ahead of time. And we also share a lot more news than what usually goes into it. For example, the Nick Khan releases, I got a huge boost from Twitch because of the amount of information I had on Nick Khan that nobody else was actually putting out there. I then take that information, put it onto YouTube so you can get caught up there. And on YouTube, we also do a few shows. We have a Sunday night show, and once again, a Monday and a Friday preview show. Basically, I try to be the most engaging wrestling journalist you will ever see. My role, as I see it, is not necessarily to be there telling you the news, but also to bounce off of what you bring to the table, to be as entertaining as I possibly can. So, for example, I have ridiculous things over on Twitch, such as an example, I have theme changes. So, for example, you can stick me in a pirate hat for a while, and so on. There are also Christmas jumpers. There is a suit, and so on and so forth. We like to try and entertain as much as possible. You can check me out on youtube.com/c/Tom Colohue or twitch.tv/Tom Colohue as well. We would love to have you over there, jumping in, chatting away, and winning 24/7 championships.
Absolutely. Sounds absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend anyone that hasn't already to go and do so. The links are in the description below. And just to say, Jason did say, thanks, guys, for a fun show. Thank you very much for checking out. As to everyone for their questions as well. We did have one come in as well, just as we were closing off. So I will actually just put that in there as well. Interesting because Sasha wins the belt and she was on SmackDown with Charlotte too. That would be interesting if that was to go down, if Sasha was to win and both belts would be on SmackDown. But we both heavily believe it will be Becky versus Charlotte, don't we?
I believe that Sasha Banks has 0% of a chance to actually win this championship.
Interesting. Well, that's pretty much everything from us anyway. Thank you to everyone that's been watching. Tom, thank you so much for being on as well. For everyone that is on this channel, if you for the first time, please like, share, subscribe. Leave a comment after this video goes off as well. Helps the algorithms and all that sort of stuff. It's boring content for you to listen to, but it really helps the channels grow, as well as the watch time, the likes, stuff like that. So anything you want to interact with in the comments after this video goes off air, of anything that's been discussed or anything else, feel free to. I'll come and have a chat with you. I'm really happy to do so. And it really does help the channel grow a long way. If you subscribe, share with a friend as well. We can easily help the channel grow further. But that's all for us anyway. And I'll be back for another live stream on Friday. I'll be joined by Wrestling by Waldridge. We're going to be doing a retro review. SCW Rewind returns with Halloween Havoc 1997. That was the show you voted for, and it will be the show that we will be discussing in great detail. So yeah, thank you very much. We'll see you next time, and have yourselves a good one. Thank you for watching SCW Live, the latest Q&A.